So I'm more of an artist designer. I'm not so much a writer, or maybe I am. I don't know. So I wrote the title because they said, "Can you please provide a title for me?" And I thought, what's more interesting than what makes Indians so interesting to white people? Um, and so I put a little photograph of myself up there, and I thought, sure, nice little Indian girl. Doesn't she look pensive? She's. This was actually one of those moments. It was in a potlatch for my mother, and sometimes you get captured, and that moment actually captures the essence of what happens in the potlatch. It's the moment when I imagine my mother, her spirit rising from the big house and going to the place where she was meant to be, and I could let her go. And I did study anthropology. I did not graduate. I tend not to do those things. But when I was studying, I was down in Mexico. I did two field schools in Mexico. And, there's this whole idea of objectivity. And I was doing a pilot ethnography in a small little fishing village. I'm about a foot taller than everybody there. So, you walk into the village trying to look like you belong. I had my Viva los Sandinistas t-shirt on. But it was the coolest experience for me. So, growing up in Fort Rupert or in Alert Bay, we always had anthropologists coming to our village. And it's been, when would you estimate the first one came? Yeah. So for years, our villages have been inundated with white people. So I'm not a white person, but I did go into this small fishing village in Mexico and did what the other anthropologists did to us and ended up talking to them. I gave a ride to a elderly man who had never had a pair of shoes on and who had never been in a car before, and he was worried that he was going to dirty the floor of the car. But I was the kind of person that went against all the norms. I was a woman who worked on a fishing boat. I was there alone, and it was really an extraordinary experience. And I think I wanted to know what it felt like to be on the other side. And I'm going to try and change this. Do you know? Oh, the worn off part. So this is Ani Slaga on the right and her daughter on the left. So she came down from Alaska and she was married to Robert Hunt. And this is the funny part about why white people are so interested, because her husband was white. And if they didn't get together, I wouldn't be here. She was a weaver of these Chilkat blankets, which is represented here and everywhere. And because the power of her character, I mean, we're still emulating who she was today. And out of her descendants, there are maybe 100 artists working today out of that one single woman. This is my village, Alert Bay. The grass where I grew up on, me as that sweet little girl, and a soccer field. But our big house was over here. So when was it built? In 1967? 65? So during the potlatch ban, there were no big houses. And this was one of the first ones that was built. So Alert Bay became this mecca for potlatching. And from my house, I could hear the sound of the drums. And it was a resurgent, the first time we had heard that sound in, 100 years or so. My mom and my dad, this is one of our first potlatches we had. That's my dad on the left, my mom in the middle, and me on the other side. So this was a memorial potlatch for my mom, and the design is from the t-shirt. And I brought together the raven of Anislaga, the Chilkat, and then a wolf design in a sort of blanket design. And I put may peace and peace and peace be everywhere, because that's what I laid on my mother when she passed away. She died in my home. And so when I had this on the t-shirt for the potlatch design, some people thought it was Quackbella. It says Om Shanti Shanti. And they were like, I don't recall that. It was, this is me doing a little design. And the funny thing is, as Andy would know, and most of our family members were often photographed or filmed, and they like to see us drawing and sketching. And I remember seriously, it's true. The first time I saw my Uncle Henry draw, I was 6 years old, and I could not get enough of seeing that pencil move. It was the ovoids, the really, my God, it's so beautiful. You can't imagine seeing it happen, you know, just these beautiful, beautiful lines. I was in love with it. This is my gang. So basically, I'm telling you a story about me so that you understand the story of our village, of the book, how I got to do this project. It's sort of like a evolution of how things happened to me. I had a sort of terrible year, and my partner died. I got cancer, and then my mother died, and I promised myself after that was 1 year, I would take 6 months and I would sit in a coffee house. So that's what he did. And when I was sitting in the coffee house, I got an email from the Vancouver 2010 Olympic Committee asking me if I would submit a proposal for the Olympic medals. And I thought, what a crazy email. You know, no, me? And my friend said, yes, you over there. And I wasn't really into the Olympics or anything. And the questionnaire said, why are you interested in doing the medals? And I said, why not? And she said, no, Coco, you got to do this. You got to do this. And so I actually got it out of, you know, who knew? That's the Paralympic medal, actually. They were huge medals. And what I did was, I'm not sure if that's a different. So I designed, and the thing about what I like to do is to show how we are a community. I say that over and over and over again. But every medal was unique to that one athlete. So I made a master plan design, and the medals were cut from that master design. So if all the athletes who won a medal put theirs together, overlapping, it would make the one design. And that is the strength of what I think brings everybody together, which brings us together, which allows Aaron and I to work together, and all these wonderful people here sitting interested. So that brought me to Dresden, where I got to design a massive exhibit. And, you know, I did a lunchtime talk here last year. It was called I Am Not an Artifact, which was the precursor to why, anyway. So the fellow on the left there is Martin Roth, who left Dresden and became the first non-English director of the Victoria and Albert Museum. And so we did this conference in Munich, and he was nervous about doing this. And I was super nervous. So he said, okay, Corinne, don't say yes or no when I ask you a question. And he said, do your people potlatch? Yes. That's what I said. He gave me the nastiest look. But it was about the power of giving, which is another chance to share who we are as people. This was part of the exhibit, which I was pretty excited about, because this is an outdoor building in Dresden, and I was able to put a 2-meter white steel raven on an ancient column that you could see. And through the middle of the building, because it was the power of giving, I designed these hands that went through. And on the outside, you see that big window there? That's a photograph of Pole in Alert Bay. So you could see that from blocks away. So I was able to bring my village to this ancient town of Dresden in Germany. And this is, she was supposed to be here. She's not. But those are the kinds of fun things that I get to do. This is the village that I live in now, and there's a happy person there. This was a baptism for my nieces and my mom and dad. So I love this picture, and I'll tell you why. Because when I'm working, there's always this idea that we're like these super spiritual people, that like we're on all the time. My friend said to me, I told her I wasn't really comfortable with dogs because we have res dogs. And she said, but Coco, your people, they love animals. We have bears and cougars, like petting them. So the idea for me was that I want to show that we are indeed very serious at times, but we are still a very happy people, a very resilient people. And I'm really happy that you are here to see that. So thank you.
Okay, we'll take a couple questions for Korean. Here in front.
Is it difficult for you, or how do you feel about combining the two cultures together? Like Shai was being baptized in the church. Okay, that's one side of it. The other side of it is your ancient cultures and the other ramifications of it. Doing that.
The truth of the matter is I'm an atheist. And I don't believe in the creator story either. I believe in the culture. It's kind of like I'm a cultural person, but no, I don't actually believe in the creator story. And I think that's one of the things we really need to understand about First Nations people is that they live in a contemporary society, and we are married to both things. I had my daughter baptized because I believe that there's a beautiful place with God, but I don't believe in that particular God. I believe in a sort of spiritual, sort of, togetherness. You can't tell that I was born in 59, right? So that, I think we need to be more, to understand that we are really part of this world that we live in. There are Christians, there are probably a few Jewish people. I study Buddhism, so.
Yes, of course. And Beck?
You said towards the beginning of the talk that you went down to that field school in Mexico because you wanted to feel what it was like to be on the other side. So what did it feel like to be on the other side?
I felt like I was very obvious, an obvious kind of person, and it probably wasn't as studious as my professors would have liked. I basically sat with people and talked to them and shared stories, which is probably more why I didn't get a degree in anthropology. I got a degree in sitting in a coffee shop. But I did enjoy it. I loved it.
Marianne?
Someone asked a question before about the women and the wolf dancing, and I just would like for you to say a little bit more about the transmission of traditions and things through a woman's point of view.
No, this is a really good question. We were talking about it this morning. With the Indian Act, we were given different governments in our reservations. We were given this patrilineal way of so we have male chiefs, but what we had was a very strong Utma society where matriarchal women had a very big part in our world, and it's something that we're bringing back as well, because a lot gets lost in these translations. A lot of the time you're only working with, as Andy said, some of the protocols and with some of the dances, but women were an integral part of all of that. So getting away from that idea of this colonial structure and going back to our original structure is going to make us whole and help everybody in our world. So I'm actually a Hamatsa, as well, and aren't many female homicides. It's a different world. Even guys. Guys.
One more question for Corinne. Okay, one more in the back.
I just had a question more about your art practice and your artwork. When you were talking about the Olympic medals, you were saying that you like to show how we are a community in your work, and the example that you gave in that artwork, I can understand. I was just curious if there's other examples, other moments in your artwork that you might want to talk about that show that intention.
Sure. Well, let me just introduce my best friend in the universe sitting beside you, Janice. We've been friends forever, and Janice helps me a lot. Last year, I designed the Canadian Olympic uniforms, snowboard uniforms in Korea, and I asked Janice to help me out. She made a design that they rejected. But in general, I think every piece of work that I do, I want people to see a little bit of me, a lot of where I came from, but also where I've been and where I'm going. So those are the really critical things, and they're critical to our culture, they're critical to our survival, and I think we are lucky enough where we come from in a very rugged world that not a lot of people have traveled to. I'm hoping you all come visit.
Sure.
But that we're lucky enough to have had that history. And I'm lucky enough to be standing here in New York City where George Hunt came. I mean, that's pretty cool. So that's a great question. Thank you so much.